Good evening and welcome. Thanks very much for joining me here on NDTV. I'm Padmaja Joshi, and on every story that matters, the buck stops here. It's a major win for ordinary people who rose up in protest when the new UGC regulations were brought in. The Supreme Court today didn't just stay the new campus rules, but also made strong observations about the effect that they will have on society as a whole. The court expressed its reservations about the rules that have faced a massive backlash for being discriminatory against the general classes, calling them vague and capable of misuse. Most significantly, though, the Apex Court asked whether we are now becoming more regressive at a time when we in India should be becoming a casteless society. The Supreme Court also frowned upon the provision in the regulations that gave separate hostels for different castes and said, for God's sake, don't do this. We all used to stay together there, are inter-caste marriages as well. In fact, in its strongest comment, today the court said that unity in India must be reflected in educational institutions as well. That's right. At a time when we are talking about batenge to katenge, when we are talking about unity and diversity, how can these diverse groups, communities, castes be made even more divided through such regulations, and that too in our campuses? The cradle of thought, the place where future leaders, future thinkers, future doers of our country are being groomed. So why bring in these regulations that have the potential of dividing our campuses and our country along lines of caste in the 21st century? Was this a major misstep by the government, and who is responsible for this mess that the court even today recognized as dangerous, regressive, and divisive? In fact, remember that the pushback against these regulations hasn't just been on the streets and from students and the so-called upper caste activists. Within the BJP, there has been plenty of pushback. State Secretary in Bihar, Santosh Ranjan Rai, requested the Prime Minister for a rollback. Anil Singh, a BJP MLA from the same state, openly called the regulations discriminatory and demanded amendments. Similar views were echoed by BJP MLA from Rajasthan, Pratap Singhvi, former BJP MP Brijbhushan Sharan Singh. In fact, former Governor Kalraj Mishra, who's one of the tallest leaders from the party, also have all spoken out. They are all saying whether this was intended to split society, whether this was done unthinkingly, if people did not realize the potential it has to split society right down the middle. But in the middle of all this, while there were voices within the BJP speaking up, the opposition remained true to form. Over the last 15 days, they have been vocal in their support of the UGC regulations. Today, they questioned the very intent of the Supreme Court. In fact, several within the ecosystem, several within the legal fraternity even said, what is all this hullabaloo about? Why are all these people crying? Why are they on the streets? This is only an upper caste backlash. This is a bunch of privileged people who are upset because their upper caste privileges are being taken away. They wanted the status quo to be maintained. They've enjoyed the best that society and the country has to offer all of these years. They have progressed and pushed others down, and now when that is being denied to them, that is the reason that they are protesting.
जो जारी किया गया नोटिफिकेशन, उसमें कुछ सुधार जो करते हुए और कुछ कमियां जो छूटी है, मैंने आज भी कहा है कि सरकार को इस पर अविलंब कार्रवाई करनी चाहिए और डिस्क्रिमिनेशन किसी के साथ नहीं हो। अगर SC/ST 12 में था तो इस बार पिछड़े को जोड़ा गया है, समान वर्ग को क्यों छोड़ा गया? समान वर्ग के साथ भी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं हो, और कोई कहता है इसका मतलब अगर समान को छोड़े हैं।
अभी भी ये रेगुलेशंस IIT और IIMs को लागू नहीं होते हैं, तो ये किस बात की इतनी ऑपोजिशन हो रही है, मुझे कोई बात समझ में नहीं आ रही है। ये अपर कास्ट का रिएक्शन है। यहाँ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है स्कॉलरशिप्स में। उनको क्या स्कॉलरशिप की ज़रूरत है? उनके पास काफ़ी पैसे हैं, हर इंस्टीट्यूशन में उनको एडमिशन मिल रहा है। डिस्क्रिमिनेशन ये असाइनमेंट्स में होता है, उनको कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं है असाइनमेंट्स में। डिस्क्रिमिनेशन अपर कास्ट सुपरवाइजर से होता है, उनको ये इसके बारे में कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं है। सीटिंग में होता है, हॉस्टल्स में होता है, PhD स्टूडेंट्स को होता है। कहाँ है उनके खिलाफ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन? ये किस बात का हंगामा चल रहा है, मुझे कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रही है।
और UGC का विवाद यहाँ से शुरू होता है कि सरकार पढ़ने वाले बच्चों के बीच में जो सवर्ण बच्चों के द्वारा कभी कोई घटना घट जाती है, उसको लेकर के दलित और ओबीसी बच्चों के संरक्षण के लिए एक कानून लेकर के आई है, जिसके कारण बड़ी भ्रामक स्थिति हो गई है और आज देश में बड़े पैमाने पर विरोध हो रहा है।
And that brings us to the big questions on which the buck stops here tonight. Has the historic injustice that was being done been stopped in its tracks by the Supreme Court, which has stayed the UGC regulations? Will the government now scrap the regulations or at the very least make them caste neutral? Like the Supreme Court said, instead of a casteless society, are such rules taking us backwards? And most importantly, despite the very, very stringent observations by the Supreme Court, how can the ecosystem still continue to try and guilt the upper caste or the general caste who are just asking for equity and equality? Okay, let's go straight across to J. Sai Deepak, joining us live now on the buck stops here. Thank you very much, J. Sai Deepak, for speaking to us. You know, critics of all the protests that have been taking place are regularly arguing that Article 15 guarantees that there is no discrimination based on caste. The UGC regulations were brought in for that on the instructions of the Supreme Court. Then the primary protests, what is the logic behind them?
So first of all, let me start with an apology that I'm having to engage with you on the move. I'm on the way to the airport. I'm stuck in Bangalore traffic, so my apologies for that. See, the issue is this. Let me just give you some history so that you have a clearer picture as to what's happened. You had a UGC regulations of 2012. 2019, post the Payal Tadvi case and the Rohit Vemula case, petitioners approached the Supreme Court saying that the UGC regulations of 2012 are not being implemented properly. And the underpinning of the case was that both the deaths of Rohit Vemula and Payal Tadvi was a result of caste discrimination. That was the statement and that was the claim made in court. Therefore, the then bench comprising of the current Chief Justice, who was not the Chief Justice then, Honorable Justice Suryakant, basically said that UGC regulations cannot be a symbolic measure. You will need to implement it better. So let's look at the question of implementation. So the question was not of the inadequacy of the structure or the definition. It was a question of implementation in terms of allocation of resources and formation of committees on campuses. This is how the matter started in 2019. 2019 until 2025, it's practically in a deep slumber and the matter is lying in cold storage. 2025, suddenly the matter again gets taken up. And at this stage, the government of the day presents a very balanced version, draft regulations of 2025, which basically provided for 3 safeguards and salient features. 1, that malicious complaints and motivated complaints will be prosecuted. Both parties will have the right to lead evidence to dispel or repel each other's contentions. 3, stakeholder committees will have representation from across the board, not just the so-called affected communities. And 4, there was no attempt to increase the definition or expand the definition from SC/ST to OBC also. And there's a reason for this. Because SC/ST Atrocity Act has some kind of a putative history, which we have come to accept. That's a different issue. OBC reservations have been introduced primarily on economic basis and socially backward positions, not because of any particular history beyond that. Therefore, you don't have let's say, an OBC version of the SC/ST Atrocity Act in the first place. You understand what I'm saying? Therefore, there was no need to expand even the definition. Now, when this was happening, what is it that led to the drastic change from the draft of 2025 that was presented by the government in the Honorable Supreme Court to the regulations of 2026, where there's a sea change? The safeguards are gone and the definition has been expanded, and it is almost as if you're creating a Gestapo on campuses. My apologies for using that language. Okay? And there is a complete exclusion of a vast swathe of a class of people who belong to this country across religious, let's say, identities, which is the general community, the so-called non-reserved community. Obviously, therefore, parents will be worried about sending their children to college campuses and even school campuses here. Who knows what will happen next, right? So the basic question that people should be asking is, if there was already an SC/ST atrocity legislation in place, which does not exclude campuses from this kind of a discrimination, where was the need to come out with the 2012 regulations in the first place? So the story is, From decent, it was supposed to become better. It has become worse. From 2012, it should have gone to 2025 draft. Instead, it has gone down the path of 2026 UGC regulations. That's the long and short of it.
Except two things happened, that the OBC students groups, they said we also should be included because anecdotal data suggests that there are atrocities against OBCs as well. It's not just limited to SC, STs, also OBCs should be included. That is what changed.
So here's the problem. Therefore, is the government going to take a position? Those who don't represent it will not be represented or considered in the definition? It can't be a situation of jiski lati uski bhais. No, that can't be the argument. So let's assume that you don't have people from the general community representing their interests before the committee. Does it mean that it gives you the right to come out with a definition that excludes them from the scope of discrimination? I can tell you the number of instances that I have faced on college campuses for my Brahmin identity in Tamil Nadu. Okay? That's a state with a particularly peculiar history when it comes to my community. What happens there? So therefore, if those regulations were actually introduced, a situation that is already bad for the Tamil Brahmin community in Tamil Nadu would have become even worse thanks to this campus regulation. And this was when I was, as an engineering student, I faced that. So the point is, if the argument cannot be that somebody chose to present their point of view, therefore they were represented and their point of view was considered, and therefore the others cannot be considered. You're a government, for God's sake. You have a duty to be equal across the board, regardless of representation. I don't buy that argument, I'm sorry to say.
But Indra Jaising is arguing that when you say jiski lati uski bhais, lathi aapki hai. Upper caste, what are they crying about? For years and years, they have wielded the lathi and they have had the bhais.
That narrative is way past its sell-by date. And when people start revisiting the history of caste atrocity literature in this country, they'll be shocked. The less said, the better on the subject. But if this was a Congress government in place, I can understand them buying this hogwash, lock, stock, and barrel. But it's a non-Congress government which shouldn't have gone down this path. Second, Ms. Jaising's position actually is that even the 2026 regulations as they stood were inadequate. So what am I supposed to say? If they were inadequate and she wanted even more problematic, let's say, positions incorporated legally, then I don't know what is it that people were batting for? To turn every campus on this country into pre-2014 JNU. That can't be the situation.
Is this a preemptive outrage?
We wanted lesser.
Is this a preemptive outrage driven? Is this a preemptive outrage driven largely by the upper caste? Because that is the color and the feeling that this is all the Brahmins, Thakurs, Banyas getting together because they find their hegemony challenged at this point.
One, if Brahmins, Thakurs and Banyas get together, there's nothing wrong. Just as everybody else can band and bond together, so can Brahmins, Thakurs and Banyas. So let's not actually say that they are not supposed to get together. Everybody has the right of association under the Constitution to protect their interests. Point number one. Point number two, preemptive would mean taking an action even before the regulations are come into effect. Has that happened here? It's not as if these instances of protest have been going on since 2025. They've started only... No,
because the minister said that we will not allow misuse. The rules exist, so you should not preemptively fear they are going to be misused. Otherwise, there should be no law at all. Any law can be misused.
As a student of constitutional law, I can't think of a single principle where executive assurance can prevail over fundamental constitutional infirmity. If there is a fundamental problem in the definition, assurances cannot actually act as band-aids over a cancerous problem or a cancerous definition. Okay? So that doesn't cut ice. And I'm not going to single out any particular individual or ministry. Everybody speaks on behalf of the Union of India when they defend it, period. Therefore, the Union of India cannot take that position and say, we will give you this assurance. What ashwasan and assurance am I supposed to take to college campuses and police stations? How does it work? I'll give you a simple example. I've given this example on your show even before. Even after Section 66A was struck down by the Supreme Court through the judgment in the single case, remember what happened? Police stations were still registering affairs under Section 66A. That was the situation in the country. So you're telling me a law which has been struck down is still going to be implemented by police stations, but there is no scope for abuse of an existing provision. That is the status of our justice system.
Let me reverse the logic. Many men argue, and there are many men's rights organizations who argue against the Domestic Violence Act or the Anti-Dowry Act, and they say that now men are victimized under the DV Act. However, that shouldn't mean that the DV Act, which has been called draconian by many, should be done away with. Then can a similar logic be applied to this as well? It may seem draconian to some, but is that reason enough to do away with it or to water it down?
So let me answer the question. Firstly, it is the Supreme Court which has categorically recognized in multiple judgments of the abuse of even 498A. This is not my statement. Supreme Court has recognized it. And therefore, the Supreme Court itself has said, one, whether it comes to rape laws or let's say molestation laws or sexual harassment laws or any kind of domestic violence laws, let's make it gender neutral because domestic violence is no more a one-way street. Point number one. Second, if there is every law, even a decently drafted law, is capable of misuse, that doesn't mean you have to scrap the law. That's not the argument. But if inequality and potential for abuse is rife and on the face of it there's a problem, you can't compare that with an abuse of a good law or a decently drafted law. That is the distinction here.
Okay.
Here, the definition is fundamentally problematic.
Okay, what within this this regulation as it exists needs to be done away with? Do you think at least the draft regulations that have been brought in earlier, where OBCs were not included, where you had the right to go and file complaints if there was a false allegation against you, that was preferable, that was acceptable? What should be done to make this acceptable?
The simple position is this. You can take a blanket position against any kind of discrimination, have a policy of non-discrimination as a part of your standard operating guidelines across campuses, and there's no problem with it. Okay? We are just saying, don't incorporate a framework where there is a fundamental presumption in favor of some and a presumption against some. That's it. Now, coming to the question of protecting SC/STs on campuses, there is a law, which is the SC/ST Atrocity Act already. Now, someone should point out and tell me that campuses are those no-go zones or free zones where the SC/ST Atrocities Act does not apply. Can someone point this out to me? Agar aisa nahi hai, then clearly the SC/ST Atrocity Act applies across the territory of India, and no campus and institution is an exception to it, right? Which is why my fundamental position is, why did you need the 2012 regulations in the first place if the intention was to protect SC/STs only? Because then you have a legislation for it. You don't need two laws to address this point.
But isn't it like you have laws against rape and sexual harassment across the country, and yet in individual offices and campuses you have Vishaka committees, you have posh guidelines? It's something like that.
I'm so grateful. So the point is, then you come out with a delegated legislation under the SC/ST Atrocity Act saying that this is how it will apply on these campuses. You don't need a separate set of regulations for it. And UGC regulations were not brought about saying that this is required under the SC/ST Atrocity Act. It's a separate standalone creature in itself. So let's say you're talking about the prevention of sexual harassment law. It casts a requirement on every office space to say you will do this to prevent if the number of employees exceeds so and so. This is how it will be constituted. You have to then basically say these campus guidelines are pursuant to the requirement under the SC/ST Atrocities Act. Is that the argument being made today? No. The UGC regulations are being treated as a standalone creature independent of the SC/ST Atrocities Act, which means you have two instruments acting for the same issue. Why?
All right, we're hoping that the answer will come from the government and the UGC, which in its wisdom has brought in those regulations. At what stage did this happen? Who made that ultimate decision? We'll wait for those answers. For the time being, Jai Sai Deepak, thanks very much for joining us. All right, let's open this up now. Deepak Reddy Gunapati, national spokesperson of the TDP, joins us along with Tushar Gupta, political analyst, advocate Vijit Jindal, petitioner in this particular case, a political analyst Ashutosh, A. Sarvanan, spokesperson of the DNK. But let me start with you. Priyanka Bharti, spokesperson of the RJD. Your party has been a very vocal supporter of the UGC regulations. One of the very rare times you have been very appreciative of something that this government has done. But today the Supreme Court has called it out as discriminatory and regressive. Do you think now that the UGC regulations should be rolled back?
First of all, we were not fully welcoming towards it because it was insufficient, as mentioned. But I'll talk about it. But let me first come to the buffoonery which your guest was performing over here. First of all, he said, I am praising the Supreme Court because it talks about there should be a casteless society. And on the second hand, he says, Baniya Brahman ko ek saath aane mein kya takleef hai? What is wrong? Because they were trying to protect their own interests. So what is wrong in Bahujans trying to protect their own interests? Secondly, he was criticizing...
Not at the cost of somebody else. Not at the cost of somebody else.
No.
Everyone should protect their interests, but not at the cost of somebody else being thrown in jail.
He was blatantly lying, Padmajaji. He was blatantly lying, and you also know that. I'll reveal that his lie. I'll reveal it. He was saying there is no representation of URs in this UGC Act. But in the equity committees, you will see only 3 places have been reserved. First for SC, second for ST, and third for OBC. If you talk about women as well, I see you, Padmajaji. So there in women also, anyone could be there from Bahujan community as well and from the upward caste as well. If you talk about the divyangs, which Modi ji called, तो differently abled categories से भी तो कोई सिर्फ बहुजन तो होता नहीं है विकलांग तो upper caste से भी हो सकते हैं. So there were adequate representation. I would say inadequate representation.
But the language is vague and open to misuse and discriminatory in the words of the Supreme Court. Not my guest or anybody else.
Okay. If you talk about Supreme Court, you know, there is a fear among the Bahujan communities of India. Fear comes from rulings back behind. I would take you to Bihar. When caste survey was done in Bihar, reservations were increased, but it was stopped by the Patna High Court. And lakhs of Bahujans and their careers were impacted from it. I would take you also to the first amendment of the Constitution, 1951 in Durai Rajan case, when the Madras presidency reserved some spots, some seats for SCs, STs, and weaker sections. But what happened? That matter went to the High Court, and the Supreme Court quashed it, saying it threatens Article 14. But the first amendment was done by the Parliament, and it was ensured that special provisions must be made in educational institutions for the SC, STs, and other weaker sections. And later on, it converted to reservations in institutions, in educational institutions. So what I am saying is that today the court has stayed it, but I am hopeful.
The court has not just stayed it. The court has said it is vague and prone to misuse. It is open to misuse. You cannot take the society back, go regressive at a time when we are looking at a casteless society.
Did you see the protests?
You are exacerbating the divisions in society instead of getting rid of them.
You know, did you see the protests happening against it? Against UGC, did you analyze them? You know what kind of slogans were raised over there? The slogans that were castes, that were creating a...
Ma'am, you are talking about fears in Bahujan. These are also people who are fearful.
Fearful, so fearful.
They also have fears, irrespective of what community they come from. Many of them are not as educated and well-to-do as you are. They are not as enlightened. They do not have access to the kind of education perhaps you have, Priyanka Bharti.
Yes, I have, because I have worked hard for it.
So have they.
No.
Just because of their caste, they haven't worked hard?
Padmajaji. For working, there is a difference between working hard and creating ruckus in the society and giving statements like "Teli ka chehra dekhne se din kharab ho jata hai." That is creating ruckus in the society and breaking unity.
Priyanka ji, there are only people who are saying कि आप विरोधी जो अगड़ा विरोधी laws हैं उनको वापस लीजिए. And there is no harm in saying that. They also have legitimate fears. Again, you have blanket decided that because they come from a certain caste, they have to be better, well-to-do. They have to have access to power. That's not necessarily true.
Padmajaji, do you know about those capital theory? You know, it talks about different forms of capitals. Cultural capital, social capital, academic capital, institutional capital, financial capital. And the class about which you are talking, they already have social capital, cultural capital with them. Okay. So how can you compare them with me?
क्योंकि प्रियंका भारती social capital से पेट नहीं भरता. पेट भरता है जब आपके पास नौकरी होती है. पेट तब भरता है जब आपको कॉलेज में जेल में नहीं डाल दिया जाता. You cannot live your life by saying आप ब्राह्मण पैदा हुए हैं, social capital लो और मजे करो.
नहीं, मजे नहीं करते ना. होता क्या है कि कुछ लोगों क्योंकि आप पूरे कानून को जब देख रहे हैं, आप एक तरीके से नजरअंदाज आपने ये कर दिया कि हेड तो बना दिया गया वाइस चांसलर को, तो हम न्याय की उम्मीद करते कैसे? इसीलिए हम पूरे क्यों, और वहां पे तो कोई डाइवर्सिटी है ही नहीं, आप इसकी बात क्यों नहीं करती? हर जगह पर
Priyanka Bharti, again I would like to come back because this is a very wide-ranging debate. I want you to focus on what the Supreme Court has said. Supreme Court today says this is regressive, this is vague, it is open to misuse. Do you agree with the Supreme Court or you don't agree with the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court also gave some instructions to our Pradhan Mantri ji. You know what they said? That Northeastern students face racial discrimination. And it was promoted by our PM. Why I'm saying so? He gave a statement. Ganesh ji ki aankhein choti hoti hai,
ma'am, please, okay, let's not go off in different tangential directions.
The incident to Angel Chakma, why don't you want to talk about it?
I did. And what happened was terrible, and those people are in jail, and by the SC/ST Act applies to that as well. Priyanka Bharti, an existing law already applies to that. What happened to Angel Chakma, if it happened, even on campus, it would apply to Angel Chakma.
But
My point is, your
accountable.
your
you hold
limited
PM accountable
response
for this?
to the limited observation by the
Did you
Supreme
hold-
Court. Do you think
hold
it is
them
vague and open to
accountable to this?
misuse? Yes or no?
Did you hold PM accountable to this?
I hold the entire government responsible for it, ma'am. But can you please answer the question?
No.
Do you think that these
I'm
regulations
talking about
are
his
vague
statement.
and open to misuse?
be
Yes or no?
condemned. That should be condemned. Please condemn the statement by Pradhan Mantri Modi where he said गणेश जी की आंखें छोटी होती हैं, वो बाहर से आते हैं, विदेशी होते हैं, और ऐसे स्टेटमेंट्स का इस्तेमाल किया जाता है उन लिंचर्स के द्वारा जो नॉर्थ ईस्ट से आने वाले स्टूडेंट्स की हत्या कर देते हैं.
I'm sorry to say that is a very, very pernicious argument that you are giving. दो चीजों का कोई लिंक नहीं है. पर फिर भी I will again try and make one last attempt before I bring in Vineet Jindal, because we can keep going around in circles with you dodging the real question. Today, the Supreme Court of India has said these are vague, discriminatory, open to misuse. Do you agree with this? Yes or no?
I am saying if we don't get justice from the Supreme Court, we will snatch it from the Parliament. We will take it from there. And
okay, Vineet Jindal, let me open this up now. Please, let's really get the others in. Social capital is what these people already have, those people who are on the streets. And like Indira Jaisingh also said, this is just a caste pushback. What is all the hullabaloo about? सालों से आपको सब कुछ मिला हुआ है, social capital मिला हुआ है. Why are you crying?
Padmaji, it is not about crying. It is about the specific rules which we are talking about today is UGC rules, talking about equity. We are not talking about equity. We are talking about equality. We are seeking equality, and we are talking about equality as our constitution says under Article 14 and 15. So now, if we are talking about the progressive state being a progressive state in India, so we should talking about equality. And here is the point: in these rules, the specific provisions has been cited.
Okay.
If you see the rules section 3B and 3E, if you see and if you can show here, that has been specifically mentioned the categories which can be if they are been subject to any cruelty or any misuse has been done by them, they can they are citing basically the caste, religion, creed, and the state. Any kind of
Okay, just a second. I'm having a bit of a problem with your audio line. We'll just fix that in a second. Let me bring in Vishnu Jain also, one of the petitioners in this case. Vishnu Jain, Priyanka Bharti was just saying that at the end of the day, when you have social capital, there is a fear among Bahujans that they are going to face discrimination. They need these protections. And if the Supreme Court doesn't give them these protections, they will snatch it from the Parliament of India.
See, first of all, we have to understand, and the basic question is whether as of now protection is not there. Is the Article 15(4) a dead letter? Is SC/ST Act is not in operation? Are UGC regulations 2012?
They think it's too less. Priyanka Bharti said it's too less. We need UGC regulation on top of that and then some more on top of that.
I will keep silence for next 10-15 minutes and let my sister Priyanka Bharti tell that what are the lacunas in UGC regulation 2012. Please tell. What is the mechanism? First, explain us the structure and mechanism of UGC regulation 2012 and please tell us what is the lacuna. What are you talking about now? Now, Padmaja, please appreciate.
You wanted to hear it from me, no? I'll explain it to you.
So just a minute. Now there is an affidavit. Padmaja, please appreciate that there is an affidavit filed by the UGC in Abida Salim Tanvi case, where the UGC has given figures and data, empirical data, that if there are around 1,400 complaints, out of those 1,400 complaints, 1,350 complaints have been disposed of. So the point is this, that the mechanism is already in place, SC/ST Act is in operation, and today if you will see this entire UGC Regulations 2026, under section 3 subclause C, it completely excludes the members of the general category from the definition of caste-based discrimination, which is in complete violation of Article 14 and Article 15(1) of the Constitution of India, and therefore on the touchstone of Article 14, this present regulation was under challenge before the Honorable Supreme Court. After hearing the parties, the Supreme Court has stayed the entire regulation. The court has issued notice to the central government, and the court has said Let me be very clear. The Honorable Court has said that the UGC Regulations 2012 will be in operation till further orders. So it is not that mechanism is not in place. If there is any kind of discrimination, it will be treated, it will be dealt by under the UGC Regulations 2012.
And everyone can get discriminated against, ma'am. Priyanka Bharti.
Yes.
A specific example was given that a student coming from Tamil Nadu studying in Delhi, if he happens to be upper caste, she happens to be upper caste and is ragged by SC, ST, OBC students, he or she can't even say that I'm a victim. In fact, he or she could be persecuted under the UGC regulations and told you are the discriminator and not the victim.
Correct.
This is real discrimination. This is reverse discrimination.
Padmaja ji, are you so naive or pretending to be naive? I'm asking this question because there are different forms of discrimination.
What is naive about it? Are you saying that just because somebody is upper caste, they don't get ragged?
Discrimination.
They don't get discriminated?
I'm not saying that. Don't put your words in my mouth. I am saying there are different forms of discrimination, and caste discrimination happens with Baujan students, and that's why when you are saying
it happens with all students. It happens with all students.
Just define caste discrimination. अगर आप नहीं पद्मजा जी पता
है अगर आप upper caste हैं आपके साथ रैगिंग नहीं होती है अगर आप upper caste हैं क्या आपको जाति सूचक टिप्पणी नहीं की जाती है
discrimination caste discrimination और ragging two different things do not try to make a camouflage do not concoct it together they are two different things secondly अगर आपको इतना रैगिंग बिल्कुल हमको उससे तो कम से कम ये बातें तो निकल करके आती हैं कि रैगिंग को जब क्रिमिनल एक्ट बनाया गया था तब देश भर में रैगिंग की घटनाएं कम हुई वैसे ही कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को यूजीसी में एक्ट में कानून में जब कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को क्रिमिनल एक्ट बनाया जाएगा
okay.
देश भर में इस तरह के
okay Vishnu Jain only Bahujan suffer this caste discrimination by its very definition Vishnu Jain
सुधारा जाना चाहिए इसको
पद्मजा जी मैं अपनी बहन से पूछना चाहता हूं
इसीलिए विष्णु जैन खुश हो रहे हैं सरकार अपना पक्ष मजबूती से रखती तो फिर
there is nothing personal about it let's Priyanka ji you are my sister let's be very decent to each other मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूं कि UGC Regulations 2026 में कौन से सेक्शन में कास्ट बेस्ड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को ऑफेंस बनाया जरा प्लीज बता दीजिए
अब मैं बताती हूँ कौन से सेक्शन में दैट्स 3C अब आप मुझे ये बताइए
3C में ऑफेंस है 3C में कास्ट बेस्ड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को ऑफेंस बनाया
बिल्कुल ऑफेंस नहीं बनाया गया उसकी चर्चा की गई ओबीसी एससी एसटी को इंक्लूड किया गया
अभी आपने क्या कहा इन्होंने क्या कहा कि यूजीसी रेगुलेशन 2026 में
आप तो उसी खिलाफ गए 3C के खिलाफ गए ओबीसी क्यों इंक्लूड किया गया
इनको पहले बात
ओबीसी क्यों इंक्लूड किया गया आपने तो ये कहा
just a second just to make this simpler I think the assertion here is just a second before this becomes completely technical Vishnu Jain here the argument is very simple which Mr. Sarvanan or Priyanka Bharti or Ashutosh ji has made again and again that by its very definition a caste based discrimination can only happen to somebody who is SC ST upper or OBC How can you say that upper caste should also be included because आपके खिलाफ discrimination नहीं होता है which is what Indira Jaising also said that when you have the power you have the social capital you have the money you have the scholarship you have the judges you have the professors you will never face discrimination to begin with
this analysis has come from where is the empirical research See, I can give here hundreds of examples, but I do not want to go into those examples. Ma'am, just please.
I think Mr. Sarvanan has some research. He's throwing up his hands in despair. Mr. Sarvanan has some research there.
Priyanka ji, I am not speaking in front of you.
अपना पक्ष नहीं रखती ना तो petitioner हमारे कभी ये फैसला भी नहीं
लेना एक करके please. I think Ashutosh and Mr. Sarvanan both want to come in. Where is this general assumption coming from? Where is the research? Mr. Sarvanan, answer. Specific question to you.
Yeah. First, let's go to digress to another topic. Then we will come back to this. Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, who is an OBC leader and the minister, a rabid right-wing troll says, "Stud your shoes with nails and hit him in the back." Where is the outrage for that? Is that gentleman, any case has been registered against that rabid? No. Why the BJP is not defending Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan? Is it because he is from the OBC community? If the same statement is made against any upper caste chief minister or upper caste minister or upper caste leader from the BJP, is this how you take it lying down
No, you are very right, sir. You must file a case immediately.
What the BJP stands for.
That shouldn't happen, and you must file a case. You must file.
Yeah, we will do it. No, if the BJP, which is the savior of the Hindus, is not even able to protect the dignity of their minister, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, this is chicanery. This is their helplessness.
Okay, now can you please come back to the point and answer what empirical data do you have to make these claims?
Just a moment. BJP is a party for the upper caste Hindus, by the upper caste Hindus, of the upper caste Hindus. And that has been made threadbare.
And yet they are bringing in regulations which are being protested against by upper caste Hindus.
I am coming to your point. When we speak of discrimination stems because of the way historically equality has operated. SCs, STs, OBCs were not given equal treatment. That is why reservation is given to them so that they will be treated equally. And who is discriminated against? Why this discrimination concept comes in the universities? Because if you look at the case of Rohit, Vemula, Payal, Tadvi, Pallavi, Mithun, everybody, Muthukrishnan, the thread is common. You have come from Kota. So the basis lies there. Who were discriminated against earlier?
In September 2024, a 19-year-old Brahmin girl in Tamil Nadu died by suicide because her family faced severe financial difficulties in funding her education. They could not fund her education. Despite being upper caste, she had to commit suicide. In 2016, an entire family of 4 in Tamil Nadu committed suicide because they were in potential economic or social distress. In 2019, 3 members of a family, again in Chennai, committed suicide in Salem because they were facing discrimination. Sir, again, if you are quoting anecdotal history, then there is anecdotal evidence that irrespective of being upper caste, they can face harassment, discrimination, and financial difficulties. And by the way, there is no law under which they can even file their complaint, so you will not find any NCRB data of upper caste harassment.
Vishnu Tiwari's case of Lalitpur.
Can I speak?
So if you're quoting history that historically you've got SC, ST, OBCs discriminated against, there are anecdotal evidence also of upper caste being discriminated against.
Yeah, see, when you spoke of 3 cases, I can speak of 3 million cases happening like this. If we have a classic example, the President of India is not allowed into the Sanctum Sanctorum of Puri Jagannath Temple. The President of India is not allowed, is not invited for the opening ceremony of the Parliament, new Parliament. This is how caste operates. The Supreme Court may say, oh, we want a casteless society, but can they forget that we are mired in caste? Caste determines everything in our country. That is the most important question. And potentiality of misuse, how can that be a ground for granting stay? UAPA misused, PMLA misused, and when we said this is bound to be misused, oh, if you are good, if you are correct, why it will be misused? There is misuse, there is agreements, there are courts. If there is a misuse, go to court, there are authorities.
My friend has not understood the challenge. The challenge was not on the ground of misuse. The challenge was.
We have understood the challenge.
Footing.
We know what the challenge is. We know what you represent.
I think hold your horses. So please hold your horses and hold your nerves. Please, I have been very decent enough to let you speak, and I've heard you patiently. So please give me my time. See, the point is this, Padmaja. The challenge was, so far as the part of exclusion is concerned, the challenge was on the touchstone and on the footing of Article 14 and Article 15(1) of the Constitution of India. Now, here my friend can give 3 million examples, but there can be others also who can give 4 million examples. But we have to understand, Padmaja, with a very sane mind, that the questions and the policy of framework of law and the law is not enacted on the basis of examples given on the east side. Law is drafted and framed on the basis that it passes the test of time. So therefore, if you will see our constitution, which is a living document, it has passed the test of time. Now today we are saying, and we are discussing and debating here on this show today, that what the law should be. So in that premise, in that backdrop, I am saying that if you are excluding one section of the society and you are saying that this section of the society is the oppressor and the other section of the society is oppressed, we have to understand that what is the history and what is the empirical data. I have given just 10 seconds more, Padmaja. Now let me tell you, there is an affidavit filed by the UGC in this Abeda Tanvi's case on 27th of February, wherein the UGC says that out of 1400 complaints and odd, 1350 complaints have been disposed of.
Ashutosh ji.
So there is a mechanism in place which is working itself. The statute is working out itself.
Let me come in.
Okay, 30 seconds, Arunam, then Ashutosh. Yes.
Yeah. See, the issue here is whether this legislation passes constitutional muster or not. That should be the issue. It is constitutional because who are discriminated against? People who get reservations, who were discriminated earlier,
who will interpret the constitution and decide whether it passes constitutional muster? The court will only interpret the constitution, or we will interpret it here sitting on TV. If the court has stayed it, obviously it thinks there's something wrong with it.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
What's wrong is that it is way open to misuse, discriminatory.
The constitution.
And this you have the two top judges of the Supreme Court saying it.
I have my view.
Well, I respect your view, sir, but I also greatly respect the view of the Chief Justice of India.
They did not quash it. They gave a stay.
Padmaja, what is wrong is that we did not see our
Supreme
brother.
Court. They are final, but not infallible.
That's the wrong. My brother, with his vociferous argument, should have come and argued his points before the Supreme Court.
You know, and the thing is very simple. While we are saying,
we will do it. We will
we are saying just a second. While we are saying,
we will do it at the appropriate time. We don't need your advice.
Yeah, we love to hear you,
to approach
sir.
the Supreme Court.
We love to hear you.
Okay, let me bring in Ashutosh and Tushar Gupta, because the Supreme Court today said, and it has been said, by the way, by the former Chief Justice of India, Justice B.R. Gavai, that the economic status even of the SC, ST, OBCs has changed, which is why the entire creamy layer concept was brought in. That is something that even the court remarked on today, that the material circumstances of people has also changed. So this argument that, you know, we have historically been discriminated against because we were backward simply doesn't hold. There are people who are now far better to do, well-to-do as compared to those who may be of an upper caste.
See, पद्मजा, एक छोटा सा कानून आया तो लोगों ने कितना जबरदस्त तरीके से रिएक्ट किया. Just a small law. Just think about the mindset, the situation of those backwards and Dalits who have been discriminated, dehumanized, not treated like human for centuries. Think about their pain, their anguish, their anger. Are we willing to recognize that? No. Are we still we belong to the upper caste, only 14% of the society, and we feel that we have been discriminated? What kind of logic is this?
Because, sir, everybody is equal in the eyes of law. No.
No, let me complete.
If I may humbly, sir, we have recognized the pain and anguish of people who are from a lower caste, because that is the reason why reservations have been brought in. That is the reason why SC, ST
the whole
have been
movement by Periyar, the entire movement by Narayan Guru, the movement by Kanshiram, movement by Jyotiba Phule, movement by Ambedkar, read their history and you will realize why they had to resort for this kind of movement. Because the Dalits, depressed class, OBCs were not treated even humans. Their touch was making them face the punishment. And that is still happening in this country. लोगों के मुंह में मूता जाता है क्योंकि वो दलित होते हैं. उनको
एक्ट है सर.
जाता है क्योंकि वो दलित होते हैं.
पर आशुतोष जी उसके लिए SC, ST एक्ट है.
No. Padmaja, I'm very upset that Sai Deepak has the guts to say that he was discriminated just because he was a Brahmin. What kind of argument is
But if he has faced discrimination, how can we discount his experience simply by saying we are disgusted by it?
I am an upper
How
caste.
can we negate something that he has actually gone through?
Like this ever. I might have been discriminated on other grounds, but just because I am born in a certain caste, so I should be treated like less than a human.
Sir, with
And
the
we have no
greatest of
sympathy.
respect, you know, there are many stories that Bhumihar boys will tell you from the Bihar of the 90s.
The court has done.
But I don't want to go down that road. There are many horror stories that upper caste, Brahmin, Bhumihar boys and girls will tell you from the Bihar of the 90s, and I'm sure you know better than I, that they had to run away from the state because of the kind of experiences they had, sir. So simply to say that because you are from a certain caste, you will never face discrimination, and I will scorn it, I don't think that we can negate it.
Padmaja, I think you and I can never imagine the kind of humiliation the OBCs and the Dalit has to face in this country. This is such a regressive society. Let's not live in some fool's paradise.
Okay.
I wish the judiciary has representation from 80% of the population. Majority of them, the judgment would have been entirely different.
Okay, Tushar Gupta, respond to that. And I also remind you, sir, that it was the Bihar of the 90s where it was said, "Bhura baal saaf karo." और सारा भूरा बाल में जितने भी थे वो भूमिहार थे, राजपूत थे, ब्राह्मण थे, सब अपर कास्ट थे। उसमें सिर्फ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन की बात नहीं थी। It was an open call that was given at that time. But
No. This
that is a discrimination,
doesn't hold.
Any proof you have?
You suppress them for centuries and centuries, and you expect them not to utter a word.
Okay, Tushar Gupta.
Them, dehumanize them. Don't treat them like humans. And
Good evening, Padmaja.
Not to get angry.
Okay, Tushar Gupta, the very idea that you can face discrimination is in itself disgusting. That you should claim such a thing is disgusting, and it is not to be thought of.
Good evening, Padmaja. Now, I've heard everyone for the last 45 minutes. I'll give a point-by-point rebuttal to almost every single argument made before me. Point number one, let's be clear on one thing. The state has no business in ensuring equity of outcomes. One of the objectives of the UGC guidelines was we want to ensure equity and inclusion. The state cannot ensure that. The state can only ensure equity of opportunity, which is why we have reservations. Number two, the question that upper caste cannot be discriminated against, and someone said we do not have the social capital to do that. Bhura Bal Saaf Karo, as you rightly pointed out, is an example of what happens when the upper caste are discriminated against. Muslim Yadav politics that is rampant in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar is an example of how social capital can be put together using the backward caste, and there's nothing wrong about it. Rebuttal number three. Someone said that this is general category versus the rest of the caste, and this is where this entire issue went haywire, one that the Supreme Court also took a notice of. Why aren't we acknowledging the possibility of caste discrimination within the OBC framework, within the SC framework, within the ST framework? The Supreme Court today also asked this question, that what if a person from an SC community is discriminating against a person beef also from the SC community? What happens to these guidelines then? Where in the guidelines does it say that the perpetrators only have to be from the general category, not from the SC, ST or OBC category? And yet an entire political agenda was curated that this is the general category versus the rest of the caste, because had this UGC guideline been formalized, this would have resulted in campuses turning into political battlegrounds. And rebuttal number four, that is exactly what the RJD spokesperson in her very honest and candid interview said, that we do not mind having fake cases against the upper caste. This is what is being said about the upper caste in several lobbies today, that oh, they have the money, they have the connections, they can fight their cases.
Priyanka Bharti.
What would have happened is all the university campuses would...
Yes, finish your point, Tushar, then Priyanka Bharti.
First of all, Padmaja ji, first of all, you used the word lower caste.
No, the final point is...
No, we were lowered. We are not lower.
I said so-called lower caste. So-called SC, ST, OBC.
I did not say lower.
Upward, yes.
I did not say lower. This is absolute nonsense. This lady is lying on national television.
I am talking about the anchor. I'm not talking about you. First of all, she used lower caste.
Absolute liar.
It's not lowered. I'm not telling you, please keep quiet.
Priyanka Bharti, nobody is lower and similarly nobody is upper also. It is general caste versus SC, ST, OBC. I use that word in relation to what is always said, upper caste. There is no upper caste, it is general caste.
Absolutely.
General caste versus
Padmaja,
SC, ST, OBC. That's what it has been framed as.
Secondly, Padmaja, the Supreme Court said we want casteless society. Why is there no diversity in Supreme Court? Even the bench did not have a SC, ST, OBC sitting over there. First of all,
Priyanka Bharti, the second Dalit Chief Justice of India and the first Buddhist Chief Justice of India said that there are people who are now creamy layer within SC, ST, OBC. Even he said that the material conditions of Dalits have changed in the country.
Why not talk about the cream which the social capital provided some of our citizens of India? Why not talk about it?
Ma'am, social capital is a very intangible thing. Whereas your economic status is a tangible thing. It can be measured.
Stop lying.
Economic well-being brings with it privileges. Social capital is an intangible thing. You say you were born a Brahmin, you have social capital. What will I do with that social capital?
That is definitely. You can change your class, but you cannot change your caste.
Padmaja, can I one rebuttal?
Ma'am, you can eat with money. You can't buy anything with caste.
Okay, Tushar Gupta. It's that simple.
But thirdly, please apologize.
No, my question, this social capital argument being put forward, Yadavs are one of the backward caste in Bihar. Is Priyanka Bharti telling us that they have no social capital? Why is she making up stuff? Are we going to sit here and pretend that none of the backward castes in this country have any social capital? What about the Yadavs in Bihar? What about the Yadavs in Uttar Pradesh? What about the Yadavs in Bihar? Priyanka Bharti, do the Yadavs in Bihar have social capital or not? Do the Yadavs in Bihar have social capital or not? Do the Yadavs in Bihar have social capital or not? Answer a simple question.
Did you say that? Why did you not choose us? Why did you not choose our leadership? बुरा बाल साफ करो कहा गया. शर्म नहीं आती झूठ बोलते हुए. शर्म नहीं आती झूठ बोलते. कहाँ कहा गया? प्रूफ दिखाओ. हिम्मत है आपको? खाली झूठ बोलते.
Are you saying ओ बुरा बाल साफ करो कभी हुआ नहीं है?
नैरेटिव सेट करो. नैरेटिव सेट. शर्म नहीं आती.
कभी हुआ ही नहीं बुरा बाल साफ करो.
परेशान करते हुए शर्म नहीं आती.
प्रियंका भारती जी, इलेक्शन हारने के बाद आपके तथ्य कमजोर हो गए हैं. इलेक्शन हारने के बाद आपके तथ्य कमजोर हो गए हैं. क्या भूरा बाल साफ करो बिहार की 90 की सच्चाई नहीं थी?
आपको इस तथ्य से दिक्कत हो रहा है.
शर्म आपको नहीं आती है? हर रोज टीवी पर आकर झूठ बोलती है. शर्म आपको नहीं आती है? हर रोज टीवी पर आकर झूठ बोलती है. सवाल का जवाब नहीं देती है. कास्ट पॉलिटिक्स करती है. आप
नाक रगड़ के माफी मंगवाएंगे. नाक रगड़ के माफी मंगवाएंगे. दिखाओ भूरा बाल कहाँ गया. दिखाओ.
कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगी आप. कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगी. कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगी. इलेक्शन हार चुकी हैं आप.
You know,
election हार चुकी है आप.
Not only was this said in the 90s, it has also been reiterated by a state level leader of the RJD ahead of the elections. You are welcome to go and check that out. And just as an anecdotal, since everything including social capital is now being proven through anecdotal evidence, let me tell our viewers a very interesting fact. Do you know that the royal family of Mysore is actually categorized under OBC? So when we are talking about social capital, we are supposed to believe that an so-called upper caste who is below the poverty line has more social capital than the royal family of Mysuru.
Padmaja, we are talking about the creamy layer. Are we
the Yadavs do not have any social capital?
Who was the real creamy layer? Are we going to discuss the Brahmins?
Sir, we are talking about social capital. And if caste brings with it social capital, automatically...
When it comes to OBC, you bring the creamy layer. Yadavs are creamy layer. What about the Brahmins? What about the...
No, Padmaja, let me counter that.
But there are plenty of Brahmins who are below the poverty line as well, who are also discriminated.
We are not even willing to accept that.
Let me counter that.
Okay, final 30 seconds, Tushar Gupta. I'm really out of time. Final 30 seconds.
Ashutosh,
the problem. Everybody has a problem because
Ashutosh, again, you keep saying that the social capital is with the Brahmins alone. Tell me one state in this wonderful democracy where someone says we want to play Brahmin vote bank politics. Tell me one state in this country where someone says we want to play Baniya vote bank politics. Tell me one state in this country where someone says we want to play Rajput vote bank politics. Please, Ashutosh, do not sit here and pretend that you do not understand how the politics in UP and Bihar works, and there is no social capital there.
पहले हम लोगों को तुषार हम अपर कास्ट के लोगों को सबसे पहले अपने गिरेबान में झांकना चाहिए. हमें शर्म आनी चाहिए थोड़ी सी कि हमने किस तरीके से
आप अपने गिरेबान में झांकिए, हमारे लिए मत बात करिए। आप अपने गिरेबान में झांकिए। मैं एक हिंदू हूँ, मैं एक हिंदू हूँ, मैं बनिया होने से पहले एक हिंदू हूँ, मैं जातिवाद में बांटने से पहले एक हिंदू हूँ।
हमें अगर मायावती आगे
अपने लिए बात करिए आशुतोष,
यादव बढ़ते तो
सब हिंदुओं के लिए बात मत करिए।
I mean, with the greatest of respect, to say that an entire community or a certain caste should be stigmatized simply because they have been born into that particular caste,
they should talk for themselves.
Look within, and we should be ashamed of ourselves. I very respectfully but very vehemently disagree with that. You cannot criminalize a community or a caste simply by virtue of where and how they were born. I'll leave it at that. Thanks very much, gentlemen, and Priyanka Bharti for joining me. Time for a break.